So there's only a few of us, but we're gonna get started. Since there are, since this is a smaller group, we're gonna go around the table and do introductions today. For those of you new, welcome to Salt City Data Community. I apologize, we recently changed our name, and I had a slip of the tongue. My name is Amanda Darcangelo. I'm a senior data consultant with CTI Data Group, and I'm one of the co-founders of this group. I'll hand it over to Ashley, and then we'll go around the room.
Hi everyone, I'm Ashley Jingleski. I'm a data analyst for Osmos Utility Services, who has an office out of Syracuse, but I'm with the remote team. And yeah, I'm excited to hear more about data consulting from Amanda today. Nick, do you want to go next? Or
yeah, for sure.
Anyone wants? Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
You're good.
My name's Nick. I'm currently a math teacher. I'm currently taking the Google Analytics certification course on Coursera and interested in changing careers. So I found this on Meetup and was hoping to just kind of network and see what I can learn from people who are, in the field.
Awesome. Mohammed, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Good evening, you all. My name is Mohammed, and I am a associate systems engineer at SoftBank. So overall, I do get involved with data science, and what I find myself is not knowing how to do it. Analytics, even though I'm a physics major, but I always avoided doing analytics. So I hope, and I found this group, so I hope really that I can get into data analytics and data science, and basically the software aspect of it as well.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us. Angela.
Hi guys, I'm a data analytics independent consultant right now, and I'm getting back into doing independent consulting. So this is kind of good for me. My specialty is in healthcare data. So I came to this group before when you guys had the healthcare data just recently, and I really enjoyed it. So thanks for letting me come to this, even though I live in Washington, D.C. and I went to the University of Rochester.
Everyone is welcome here. We have people come from all over. A couple weeks ago, we had a speaker from Texas, so everyone's welcome here. Elizabeth.
Hi, thank you. I'm glad everyone's welcome. My name's Elizabeth Beth Metcalf. I'm a PhD candidate and a social worker returning to work after a spell, a long time. I was a careers and code graduate, but I've been watching your group evolve, whether it was on Meetup or I'm not even sure where, but I was recently just playing with some data from just City of Syracuse slumlords and realizing, God, I hate Excel, and just thinking about working on learning visualization, but I more like digging. But so I just wanted to see what you guys were about and what I could learn, and glad you're here. Glad I'm here.
Thank you for joining us. We're glad you're here too. JV.
Hi, can you hear me? All right, fantastic. I was kind of worried because I was using a web browser. Yeah, so I work for a U.S. bank, and right now I deal with credit card data using Spark. And this is kind of a new role, and so I've taken a new curiosity towards any and all things related to data. That's about it. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Just a note again, this session will be recorded. We do have a YouTube channel that we like to keep up to date with all of our trainings and speaker sessions. Later in the session, Ashley will put a link to our YouTube channel up so you can go and see some of the past trainings that we've done if you're interested. I know I heard some people mention Excel. There is an Excel training up there. There's some Python, R, some stuff about data basics and data theory. So feel free to go and browse through that. I have a few job openings to announce at the end of the session. So keep your ears open if you're interested for job openings. We have a couple of data engineering and data consulting positions that I have from various places. So I'll do that at the end. I always feel free to reach out to me or Ashley if you're interested in anything you hear here, or if you're interested in us just reaching out to you if we hear anything. One of the goals of this group is for networking and to make sure that there's equity and availability for the jobs that we see open. Sometimes it's all about who you know, and so we're trying to make that who you know group a lot bigger. Okay, so we'll get started tonight. Tonight I am your speaker. So I'm going to be discussing what it means to be a consultant in data, particularly a consulting at a consulting firm in data, but also just consulting in data in general. I have a couple slides I'm going to go through, but I mostly want this to be a conversation for you to ask any questions that you want to know about this type of work. So I'll go through these a little quickly, and then afterwards be available for any questions that anyone might have about data in consulting. Okay. Okay, so data consulting. We're going to go through what my background is. I'm going to talk about some of the pros and cons of consulting work, what kind of skills you want to bring to the table, what the landscape kind of looks like, and then some of the parts that I find really fun about the job. So I have a BA in political science from SUNY Buffalo State. I'm currently a senior data consultant at CTI Data, which is a boutique data firm. I've done consulting. I've worked at a startup. I've worked in finance, and I've worked in the public sector over the last about 8 years that I've been in the data industry. And then in my kind of volunteer nonprofit world, I do this, Salt City Data Community. I've done Syracuse WIML DS, which is what this group was prior to being Salt City Data Community. I volunteer with Ithaca College Cybersecurity Board, and I work with Syracuse University Summer College to educate high schoolers on data. So I want to talk about my background a little bit just to give an idea to people of what it means to build a career in data. And the first thing I want to highlight is that I have a BA in political science. I didn't start in data. I didn't know that I wanted to get into data. What really got me into data was when I was in college, I had a professor who taught me how to use Stata. And Stata is a statistical analysis program. It does some really interesting stuff. And from there, she also taught me a little bit of R. And so between learning a little bit of Stata and a little bit of R, I thought I was really interested in the political science aspect of it. But what I really found out was that I loved doing the data analytics and the digging in the data and kind of playing in that sandbox to try and figure out this new piece of information. What's the next new thing that you can understand from all of this junk data that people bring in? What can you kind of sift through and find? So from there, I took positions that I knew were somewhat in the area of data, but where I could be at a company that would allow me to do side projects. So for example, my first organization, TBR Inc., they are a consulting firm, and I was on an analytics team, but that analytics team was very specific to survey analytics. So it wasn't really data engineering so much, which was my real interest, but that organization had a side project where they were trying to consolidate all of these 20-year-old Excel files where all their analysts were doing all of their models and stuff into a database. And I somehow ended up on the team that was consolidating all of that data. So I got my first foray into understanding data modeling and data engineering, and I got to work with SQL for the first time. So so I really want to put that emphasis on the fact that you don't have to start as the most technical person, as the most educated person, as the person who is the most, you know, integral to that specific niche of data. As long as you're willing to raise your hand and say, I volunteer for the weird side project that does the thing that I like to do, and you're in a company that empowers you to do that, then you really get to have these opportunities, especially because the data industry is still, compared to other industries, fairly new. You know, we're seeing over the last 5 years, we've seen some of the first true data and information sciences schools and graduate programs and undergraduate programs open up. Whereas before then, it was really people coming in from different industries into data science. There was no specific education you could get for data science. So it's a fairly new field. Pulling yourself up and building your skills up in alternative ways is very much still embraced in the field. Some of the pros and cons of consulting in data. So when you're a consultant, you get to be fairly autonomous. You know, you go into a client's a client's world and you say, I can fix that. And then you spend as many hours as you need to and you bill it and you fix it. But you're not really held to anything other than the scope of work. In that, you also have pretty significant flexibility. You can work whatever hours you want. You can say, I'm going to take a day off if you want to take a day off. You are not held to a 9-to-5 position necessarily. You also have flexibility in working, working environments. The organization that I'm with, every single person works fully remotely. And that was the case even before COVID. So this position, this work allows you to work remotely. You can have your own office if you'd like. You can go into an office. I know that there are, so again, the organization that I'm with right now, I know that there's an office I could theoretically go to if I felt like it. I don't want to because I work from home, but if there was a time at which I wanted to go into the office, it's there. So there is definitely this sense of flexibility. There's also a defined scope when you're a consultant. You work with a client, you create a features and functions list that they want to see from the product that they want, the outcome that they want. You define a scope of work, and that is what you work on. One of the things I've found in in-house operations is sometimes there's a lot of scope creep where you define an outcome that you want to see, you work with a team, and everyone comes to an agreement about what that's going to be, and then 3 weeks later, the target has moved significantly. When you're a consultant, that target doesn't move. You have this scope of work. If the target moves, you have to come up with a new agreement. Compensation. It's always something on everyone's mind when it comes to careers. They call it a job for a reason. It's work. You get compensated for it. Consultants get compensated extremely well because you're billing by the hour. You're billing your clients by the hour. You often are the beneficiary of that compensation. And then there's this variety to consulting work that just really isn't available to in-house operations. You work a job. Right now I'm working a job in healthcare. The next job that I'm working is going to be in audit management. Then I might move on to a startup. So every 6 months I move on to this new opportunity, this new industry. I get to learn about new things. Whereas when you're in an in-house operation, you You know, say you work for a bank, you learn finance, and that is your industry for however long you're with that organization. There are some detractors to working as a consultant. There is pretty significant turnover in the field, both at a consultancy. So you may jump from consultancy to consultancy or consulting to industry and back. And there's turnover with your clients. So you're always reliant upon the client, you know, maintaining your contract or renewing your contract or getting the new client. So that's always a concern. There is some significant travel when you're a consultant. Obviously, right now, that is less of an issue because of COVID and the lack of travel that comes with that. But outside of the current scenario, there is a pretty significant amount of travel that's attributed to consulting. You travel to your clients, you travel to potential clients, you travel to speak at different conferences or present papers. There's also a lot of hours involved in working as a consultant. When I mentioned that there's flexibility, and there is, but you're also, when I say you're not working a 9 to 5, you're also not working 8 hours a day usually, especially on tight deadlines. The expectation is that you meet a deadline. There is no leeway. And so if it means working a 16-hour day to meet a deadline, you do it. There's a lack of input that you have with your client. So while you are able to give your opinions as an expert in the field of data, your client will do what they want about your strategic recommendations, about the projects that they want to build, about the outcomes that they want to have. So again, with this defined scope, while that is a positive in some senses, it does mean that you don't necessarily have input into the work that you're doing. You just do the work. And then finally, this is kind of nitpicky, but you track your billables as a consultant. I get frustrated with this just because sometimes I've learned to live with it. I have a nice time tracker on my computer now that tracks everything for me by the minute. And so, you know, once every half an hour, I make sure to check it and I change it so I can track my billables easily. But it takes a lot of organization to make sure that you're tracking your billables accurately and billing your client reliably. So I do consider that kind of a detractor to working as a consultant, whereas if you're in-house, you know, you just work during the day and you don't have to bill any clients. Before I go to the next slide, are there any questions? Okay. So next I'm going to talk about the skills that you want to have going into data consulting, which is a bit different than the skills going into any specific industry. Data, I like to say that data is an industry agnostic field. And as a data consultant, you are expected to be industry agnostic. You're expected to have SME knowledge, so subject matter expert knowledge in data. So you need to know best practices of data. You need to know what applications are available in the field. You need to know, you know, what research is out there about the next and new thing. And that's why I have this this visual over here. So when I talk about SME knowledge in data, it's all about the data life cycle and the data fabric overall. So all of these individual pieces of the data industry, even if you do go into a specific niche, the expectation is that you have some general knowledge about all of these. This SME knowledge is that you should have some industry knowledge in some industry. So I mentioned that I've worked in finance, public sector, and in an e-commerce startup. So the expectation is that I have some sort of subject matter expert knowledge in each of those fields because I might go into those as a consultant. You know, if you're dropped into the finance world, you either should know something about the finance world or get up to speed on it pretty quickly. The next really good thing to bring into data consulting is people management. A lot of the work that we do is you know, changing processes and creating efficiencies and implementing new technologies. And so that requires a lot of people management. You're changing the way that individuals work. And with that comes the need to manage up, to manage horizontally. As a consultant, while you are in charge of a significant amount of things, you also operate outside of the hierarchical structure of the organization that you're consulting for. So you're always managing up to someone else at that organization. So having people management skills is really key. Next, you want to have some cross-platform technical skills. So you don't want to give yourself a technical niche necessarily, especially in an individual platform or with with a single provider. For example, you don't want to necessarily be end all be all AWS data engineer. If you're a data engineer, you should know the theory behind data engineering. You should know some about AWS engineering. You should know some about Azure engineering. You should know about Snowflake. You should know about Sisense. You should be able to do engineering across a number of platforms. Same thing for like visualization tools. If you want to be a true, if you want your data skills to be focused on BI and data visualization, then you should know Tableau, you should know Power BI, you should know a number of visualization platforms. With that being said, there are a significant number of certifications out there that are extremely helpful. Microsoft has a lot of certifications available. I believe at the beginning of the call, Nick, you mentioned that you were in a Coursera course right now. Coursera is great. Ashley and I have a list of different resources that are available that we recommend to use for different courses and stuff like that. So learning these cross-platform skills is available out there. You just kind of have to go looking for it a little bit. Next, you really want to focus, especially in the last few years, on open source. So this has really become a focus of the data community because data is really has blossomed out of the research industry. Open source has always been the backbone of data analytics, data engineering, and so there are platforms that are focused on open source. Python is really big in data. I use it for all of my ETL. I'm building a platform based on Python right now. R is a big language and data analytics tool that you should know how to use if you're going to get into data. There's tools like Elasticsearch that are open source at the very basis, and then you can always purchase hosting or other options available, but they're open source at the basis of them. So you should really know how to use these platforms, use open source in general, get really comfortable in Git, and pulling things down and kind of playing with them. One of the skills that I've found really helpful is just picking up something new and running with it. So a new application, a new tool, a new skill, the capability to just pick it up and learn it and read through the documentation and kind of get your hands dirty in it is really important. So lastly, I want to talk about full stack versus niche. So full stack is a software engineering term. And in the software world, full stack means that you're an individual who codes both back-end and front-end platforms. In the data world, full stack means that you do everything from ETL, so extract, transform, load. You write code, you know how to write Python. You do data modeling, you do analytics, you know how to do some data science, you know how to do some visualization. You can talk to customers and give demonstrations. It's really the jack of all trades of the data world. Whereas an individual who is niche may not have all of that, all of those individual skills in their toolbox, but is very focused on an individual aspect of data. So they may be focused specifically on data architecture and data architectural theory. And so while they may not know some about each of the individual pieces of the data industry, they know everything about data architecture. So what you want to do as you get into the data industry is kind of figure out whether you want to be full stack or you want to be niche, because the way that you go about learning about the data industry will change based on the type of data analyst or data scientist that you want to be. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the landscape of consulting. So there's a couple different aspects of data consulting. First of all, there's the big four. These are auditing analytics companies. So their basis, their core function is auditing, often auditing through accounting, but they're big analyst firms. And they are all consultants. So Deloitte, Ernst & Young, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and KPMG are the big four. They do, I don't even know, like 80% of auditing and data consulting globally. They mostly hire individuals directly out of college, or directly out of boot camps, directly out of some sort of incubator. Next, we have strategy consulting. So that, unlike the auditing and consulting of Deloitte, EY, PwC, and KPMG, which is mostly focused on like efficiencies, asking the 7 whys, trying to understand how to make organizations leaner. Strategy consultants like McKinsey, BCG, and Bain use data to grow in a strategic way. So they ask the questions of like, where do you want to be in 10 years as an organization? And then work towards getting those organizations there in a very data-driven way. Next, there are in-house consultants. So this is the enterprise consulting arms of very large organizations. Think like Google, Facebook, IBM, GE, all of these organizations have consulting arms that so they may do one of two things. They may be true in-house consultants, which means that it's a department that focuses on creating strategic movement for other departments within the company. So, say this data department goes into the finance department and says, how do we streamline your operations? Or Let's work on developing your KPIs, or how do we operationalize your long-term goals? So that's an in-house consultant. And then the other type of enterprise consultant is an external facing enterprise consultant. So it's essentially a consulting firm within a large organization like GE or IBM that works with other organizations, often to implement solutions developed by GE or IBM. So they'll work as consultants to drive the products of that company or implement the products of that company. Then finally, there are boutique firms. So this is like Savient, Insight, CBIG. There's 1,000 of them out there that are these small data firms that focus usually on a specific industry or a specific green field. I work at a boutique data consulting firm that focuses on specifically hiring full stack data individuals to implement strategic goals. So these firms are very niche. They are small, usually less than 150 employees, usually less than 100 employees, but up to 150 employees. And they're very focused. They're often one generation, and they're very agile. And so organizations like to hire boutique firms because they have the ability to be agile within a larger organization. So if you have, if you have a large organization that potentially doesn't move as quickly as the C-suite would like it to, you hire a boutique firm to come in and kind of speed the process of implementing data solutions faster. Okay, so finally, I want to talk about the things that I really like about my job, and the things that are kind of appealing about data consulting. I solve puzzles for a living. So I get to log onto my computer every day and start the day with a problem, and then often either through code or through modeling or through digging through data, I get to solve that problem. You don't have to be a stats nerd to love data and be in the data field. I know people who are 1,000 million times better than me at stats. I do the engineering for them and they do the data science. So there are all sorts of needs within the data community, and all of those needs are served by different individuals. There's a huge community of data individuals. This is largely driven by the basis of open source. So because so many of the data solutions are open source, it has created this community that wants to connect with each other because we build tools and we build solutions together. People are really happy to help one another, to reach out to one another. This organization, this data community is a tenement to that. I mean, I don't think one person that I've reached out to ask to do a speaker session has said no, because this is such a great community of individuals. There's a huge demand for people who do the work that we do. We are rare. We do really good work usually. And there's a lot of need out there for this work right now. And so going into consultancy allows you to take advantage of that need and that demand. There's a variety of skills needed. So like I said about, you don't have to be a stats nerd. You can have a niche in data and data consulting that is not necessarily focused on coding. You don't necessarily need to code. You don't necessarily need to do stats. There's a lot of skills needed. And as I mentioned earlier, it's the early days of the industry still. We're kind of in that growth period where where there's starting to become established, university programs for data. We're starting to see more established institutions around data education, but we're still in the early days of the industry. So if you want to change careers and you want to, start doing something just by learning to do it online and not necessarily go to an institution and get a formal degree in data science, you can still do that. So these are, to me, are the really great things about the data field today. And part of the reason why I do data consulting. Okay, I've talked for a while, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to let other people ask me questions. Can I list the full stack skills again? Yes, I can. So full stack skills, and I'll type them in here as I go. They include like data engineering, data architecture, business intelligence, visualization, what else? Data governance and policy, which data governance and policy is the idea of developing rules and organizational policies around your data solutions. So for example, you might have a policy that after 5 years, data is scrubbed from your system. So that's a data policy, and that would go under your data governance. So that's just some of them. I will be posting this slide deck in our GitHub. So you will have that full little wheel chart that I showed, and that has more listed. But when you think about it, think of everything that requires a touch from an individual, from data collection all the way through to presentation to a client. Lillian, you have your hand raised. Lillian, you're on mute.
Thank you so much for hosting this, first of all, and talking a little bit about your experience. On the last slide, you were talking a little bit about how we're still in the early days of kind of data science and data analytics, data consulting. My question is, for consulting, how much of a role does, I don't want to say credentialism, but like formal education play in finding and pivoting into that career? Because, I've noticed with not with data, but with a lot of consulting, depending on the employer, they really go straight to like certain schools to find people, or are looking for like a certain name versus like whether you have the skills or not.
I would say if you don't have the, if you're not a recent graduate from a specific program out of an Ivy League school, or like U of R or another top tier school, a Big Four firm isn't going to hire you. They like recent graduates because those organizations have very specific cultures, and they like to hire individuals who have not had other work cultures before. If you're interested in pivoting, yes, moldable. If you're interested in pivoting into the industry, I would suggest going to a boutique firm. Often they look less at formal education credentials and more at the work you've done in the past. And it's all about transferable skills. So particularly boutique firms look for your experience in data, in how you've sought it out. So if you've sought out things to do, like you've gotten a certificate in something, or you've taken a course, or you've shown interest, that's really important. And then the other thing that's important to show is your subject matter expert. So if you're an expert in healthcare, then you want to find a firm that has a vertical in healthcare that focuses on healthcare, and you want to be able to show your skills and your ability to adapt your previous knowledge of healthcare to the data work that they do.
Great, thanks so much.
Of course. Nick.
Yeah, so piggybacking off kind of what you just said, especially about experience, just very quickly about me, I've got a degree in mathematics that was focused on probability and statistics, but because I've been a math teacher, I don't have necessarily the coding. The coding I've been learning online, things like that. I tend to pick up coding very quickly. It's just my brain works that way. I'm kind of one of those people. What I'm having trouble is finding relevant work experience where I can show that I have these skills. I've used Excel for 15 years and I can VLOOKUP, use pivot tables all very quickly. That's not an issue. It's just finding something where I can demonstrate that I actually have this knowledge. So can you speak to anything about that?
Definitely. So Angela's really hit the nail on the head here. If you have a GitHub repository, that is always something that you should point a potential employer towards. Another thing you can do that I am less involved in, but Ashley is very involved in, is a community called Kaggle. And Kaggle is a community of data experts where you can do competitions and upload some of your solutions and do different things like that. And then another thing I would say is that interviewers will ask you technical issues and technical questions. So they may say, we need to do this. How would you get there through this number of steps? And so you'll have to do a technical interview if you get to a certain spot in the job interview. So if they're interested in you, they will get to a point where they will test your technical skills. So you don't necessarily always have to put them out there. You don't have to have a portfolio. You just need to have that knowledge and make sure that you're vocal about it in your initial interviews and say, like, I do have these skills. I just have not had an opportunity to present them yet.
Awesome, thank you. I'll definitely check out Kaggle. I've played with a little bit, and I've signed up for a GitHub, but I haven't done anything on it quite yet. I'm still, I've just gotten through SQL. I'm starting to learn R, and then I'm going to jump into Python.
Awesome.
It's like I said, I do pick them up, rather quickly. I just haven't had a chance to do anything, and quite frankly, I don't think I know enough to do anything quite yet. It's I'm just trying to kind of plan out plan my escape, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. And definitely check the chat. Mohammed and Angela have some good suggestions. Data hackathons are a thing now. I would suggest you look up some of them. I've done a few. They're fun. They are very different nowadays because they're all virtual. But they're definitely still enjoyable and give you the kind of clout in the community. There are also a lot of volunteer opportunities. So Code for Syracuse is an organization locally that does coding projects to help individual organizations that may not have the funding to develop their own solutions. So a couple years ago, for the tenants union, I worked on a project with them where we helped, we used the open data platform that the city of Syracuse puts out, and we built a database of bad landlords. And so, so projects like that are always really helpful too. And I will put in the chat, everyone who is interested in data in the Syracuse area, and really anyone interested in data at all should join the Syracuse IO Slack channel. And that will give you lots of opportunities to connect with the community in the community in data, in coding, in all sorts of things. There's a lot of volunteer opportunities on there, and there's an entire thread dedicated to jobs. So people post jobs up there if anyone is interested, and you can reach out directly to the individual who posted them.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody who's posting in chat too. I'm going to check out all these different things here. So thank you guys.
Other questions?
Amanda, I don't know if you condone this, but one thing that I remember reading was somebody saying for different kind of like side stuff, they were talking about like websites like Upwork, and like saying that if you like had like a friend or something that had like a job that they needed done with like data, instead of just like having you do it and like not having it like accounted somewhere, to like have that posting through there just to kind of build that like electronic, I don't know, like
Yes,
breadcrumbs
definitely.
of your consulting. But I didn't know how you feel about, or like if you've had experience with, I guess, some of these kind of, I don't know if they're like third party consulting, like side things.
Yeah, so I have done, back in the day, I did a few of them. I would say if you use them the way that you just mentioned, they are great ways to build your portfolio. So I don't know about any of y'all, but I always have family members asking me to do things in Excel and to, you know, how do I do this? I don't know how to build my website, whatever. If you want to build your portfolio, make sure that those requests are made public through a source like Upwork. And, you know, it can be, I think you're able to do something through there where it's like an undisclosed amount. So you don't have to, they don't necessarily have to pay you. It's just to make sure that that's a publicly available project for you to show potential clients that you have done projects before and you know what you're doing. Aside from that, having your name out there on forums like Upwork, or even forums like Kaggle and Medium and other community-centric websites is really important. A lot of clients come in through there. If they know your work, they're more likely to hire you. Other questions? Good question. I use a software called Toggle. It's spelled Toggl. It is very easy to use, and if I'm not using it and I'm on my computer like I am right now, a little box pops up in the corner of my window every 5 minutes saying, "Why aren't you tracking your time?" Which is very helpful in habit building. Any last thoughts or questions?
Amanda, one thing on like, I guess like the variety of projects, at least for your job right now, I guess, is there like an average like contract that, or like an average time period you'll be working with a given like customer, I guess?
So that's a really good question. There's really like two types of contracts. There's a time-based contract and there's a work-based contract. So time-based contracts are, you know, for X period of time, you will be doing this work. The client will buy a number of hours from you, and then they just run out the hours over a period of 6 months or something. Or there's work-based contracts where you have to hit your deliverables. Usually you set a timeline for your deliverables, so you know there's still an idea of how long you'll be on that contract, but really it's based on the work, not necessarily the time. The one that I'm on right now is a combination of both, where I'm required to deliver something at a certain point, but also I'm just doing maintenance work for this company for 6 months. So this is a 6-month time contract. Some of my coworkers, I have a coworker who just did a month-long contract where they did a really quick stand-up of an application, and that was a work-based contract where, you know, it was just stand up this application, transfer it over to the in-house IT group that doesn't have the time or resources to stand up a new application. There's other contracts that are, you know, 18-month contracts where it's full data management build out, where you're building everything from ETL to the data warehouse and data lake house to visualization tools, and doing change management internally to make sure individuals are using the new analytics tools that you've built. So it really varies. Okay, well, we only have a few minutes left. I did want to mention at the end, I do have a few positions that I know about that are open, so I just wanted to let everyone know. The city of Syracuse has a data engineering position open that's within their department for accountability, performance, and innovation. I know this because I am their old data engineer and I really enjoyed the job, but I decided to go into the private sector again. So that's a really fun job if you live in the city of Syracuse. There's also a data engineering position that is fully remote that I know about that is with a healthcare organization looking to find an AWS data engineer. So if you have experience in AWS, feel free to reach out. And personal selfish plug, my organization, CTI Data, is looking for some consultants. So if you're interested in getting into consulting, please reach out to me because we would love to have you. I believe those are all the announcements. Oh, no, more announcements. We will be having our projects working session next Wednesday. So if you are interested in joining our project session, we're going to be reviewing SMART goals, talking about people's individual projects that they're interested in working on, and how do we apply SMART goals to the projects that they want to get done. That is next Wednesday at 7 p.m. virtually again. So go to our meetup page and join that. And then the following Tuesday, so Tuesday the 15th, we will be joined by Jennifer Tran, who is a software entrepreneur here in Syracuse. She started an NFT platform recently, and she's going to be talking about how data is impactful in software entrepreneurship. So join us for that. That's going to be Tuesday, March 15th at 7 p.m. Yes, the best way to reach out to me and Ashley is by email. I will put mine in. Ashley, if you would put yours in as well. Please reach out to us with any questions that you may have. If you want to hear specific people speak or specific types of speakers, feel free to let us know. If you want to have trainings or workshops, any ideas that you might have, we're coming up to the end of this training arc, so we always could use some new ideas. Thank you everyone for joining us. Have a great night.